So hello everyone. So in today's video I will be talking about is the real economy in a depression or not. So I have some charts here. So let's look at the first one, figure 1.1. So according to figure 1.1, this graph shows the number of people who filed for unemployment claims from November 2019 to November 2020. And you can see the number of claims spiked from the middle of March to the middle of April. And this was due to the COVID-19 lockdowns. The dotted line represents a weekly average and the solid red line represents a moving average. The highest number of people filing for unemployment claims was in the middle of April, with 5.5 million people filing in that month. So on figure 1.2, this is a graph of the total number of people who were or are on unemployment. So the number of people who were on unemployment peaked from early March to April. Then it began to plateau and it starts to decline from the late April of 2022, November 14, 2020. And there is a steady reduction in the number of people on unemployment. Perhaps these people are finding new jobs and getting off of unemployment. The number of people on unemployment went down from 23 million people around April 2020 to about 6 million people on November 14, 2020. So 17 million people went off of unemployment because they found new jobs, or they had to find new jobs because the federal stimulus for unemployed workers was cut off around July 31st, 2020. Let me check if that's the right figures. Okay, it was July 31st, 2020. That's when the CARES Act expired for $600 a week for enhanced unemployment benefits. So this is in addition to the unemployment benefits that people get by their states, right? So that's different. So let's get to the next slide. So on this page 2, I have another set of figures. So this is the unemployment benefits people get by state. So you have the state, you have the max weekly benefit amount. So this is the amount of money that people get for unemployment per week for their state. And you also have the state unemployment info and max weeks. So max weeks is a number of weeks that people receive unemployment once they file it and get it. So unemployment benefits per week in the United States differ from state to state. So they're not all the same. So we all know the federal stimulus program for unemployment benefits of $600 per week had expired on July 31st, 2020. So in addition to the state benefits that people are still getting, they were getting $600 a week on top of that. But that has not been extended. That's already expired, so it's null now, right? However, state benefits has a duration of 20 to 26 weeks. Most of the time it's 26 weeks. And the amount varies from state to state. So in a state like Arizona, that is $240 a week, which is very little. And in a state like Washington, it's $790 per week, which is very high, which is a state that pays very high unemployment benefits. The people who lost their jobs around March to June 2020 still have unemployment benefits. Unemployment benefits are given to people who are employees and not people who operate and own businesses. It also does not apply to people who are gig workers or independent contractors as well. But I think in the provision that the federal government made for giving this extra stimulus, it did apply to gig workers and independent contractors, but now they're not getting that anymore, and they're not getting state unemployment because those people are not considered to be employees, nor are business owners. They're not considered to be employees either, so they cannot file for unemployment, for state unemployment. So we have a lot of people working in the gig economy, working for companies like Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit, Freelancer, YouTube, Fiverr, Roadie, etc. And yes, YouTube is part of the gig economy as well. And the rates for YouTube dropped significantly from March to July 2020. So the amount of money people made on that site dropped steeply. So as a result of COVID-19, people aren't going to be calling rideshare services, nor are they going to be traveling and using services like Airbnb. The hotel industry is also not doing very well overall. So in addition to that, many small businesses also went under or had their incomes drastically decreased. For example, restaurants, coffee shops, barber shops, nail salons, and other non-essential service-based businesses saw their revenues drop significantly. So like in a restaurant or something, your income will be determined by the number of people who come into your restaurant and eat there, right? So if the number of people that you're allowed to have in there is reduced, right? Like reduced by almost 50% or more, then your revenue is going to drop. And that's just common sense. So you're not going to have people frequenting these established businesses because people don't want to get COVID-19. There's a big risk if so many people go in there, and there's limitations that states and cities have levied on businesses on how many people they could have in there and stuff like that. So that played a part in reducing income for these types of businesses. Okay, now on page 3, you can see this chart. It's from U.S. bankruptcy courts. This is a government website that I got this information from. So it's pretty accurate. It outlines the number of people who filed for bankruptcy per year in the United States, all types of bankruptcy. So this chart shows the total number of bankruptcies. So that's in 2020, June up from April 2020 to June 2020. The total number of bankruptcies is 124,395 altogether. And for business bankruptcies, it's 5,154, and for all other bankruptcies, it's 119,241. And basically, the average for non-business bankruptcy filing was 39,747 and per month, and 1,718 per month for business bankruptcy filings. So if we average out all the bankruptcies for 1 year, that would come out to about 497,580 per year. That's a large number of bankruptcies, but it is much less than the figures from 2009 for bankruptcies. So as for businesses that filed for bankruptcy, these could be large companies like Pier 1, Art Van Furniture, Neiman Marcus, JCPenney, GNC Holdings, Lord & Taylor, J. Crew, etc. All in total, 29 big companies filed for bankruptcy from February 2020 to November 2020. As for small and medium-sized businesses, it's harder to gauge this because these types of businesses may not have any debt from creditors or banks or anything, so they cannot file bankruptcy. You can only file bankruptcy if you have debt. So they would just simply close their doors because they cannot cover their overhead or expenses. So most gig workers and independent contractors also can't file bankruptcy because what they do does not require a large amount of capital input to start. Like, for example, if you want to start a car mechanic shop or something, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars in tools to do that. Or if you want to start a restaurant, you need to have all the stuff there, like the stuff in the kitchen, all the cooking stuff. You need to have the tables, you need to have the chairs and the lights and everything else. So computers there and other things, the credit card machines and all that other stuff that have to be put into capital inputs. You need to have like at least, let's say, maybe $100,000 or more to start a business, and you may have to borrow some of that money to start that business. So independent contractor or someone who works in the gig economy, they don't have to put so much capital inputs in starting that, right? Because someone who's driving for Uber may just be driving their own car, right? Or something like that. Or someone who's making or working for something like TaskRabbit, they just have to go there and do the job as an independent contractor or something like that, right? So that's why it doesn't require huge capital inputs to start to work in the gig economy. Okay, on page 4, I have another chart from uscourts.gov. So this shows the number of bankruptcy filings, business and non-business, from July 30th, 2009 to September 30th, 2009. So the total number of bankruptcies was 388,485 in the past 3 months from September 30th, 2009. So the total number of business filings was at 15,177, and the total number of non-business filings was 373,308. The high number of business filings were due to the subprime housing crisis, so there were a large number of home foreclosures. So the average number of bankruptcies for business filings was 5,059 per month, and 124,436 for non-business filings per month. So that would be about 1.553 million bankruptcies altogether, business and non-business, for 1 year. That's a staggering number of people filing for bankruptcy. So in terms of bankruptcies, 2009 was worse than 2020. In 2020, if you averaged it out, this year that is, you would get 497,580 bankruptcies per year, compared to 1.553 million in 2009. So the number of bankruptcies was about 3.12 times more in 2009 compared to 2020. So we can safely assume a lot of people lost their assets from 2008 to 2011. So those people who lost their homes due to the financial crisis of 2008 most likely became renters. You can't file for bankruptcy if you rent an apartment or rent a room to live in, right? Nor can you file a bankruptcy working in the gig economy as an independent contractor. So if you own a real business, it costs a lot of money to start one. You need to buy all the equipment, have a storefront, have employees, etc. Thus, money would have to be borrowed from a lending institution to get the capital to start one. So, gig workers don't need to borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars to start their own business. Basically, they're basically sharecroppers working for a company, and they cannot set the rates. The rates are dictated by the companies that they are working for as independent contractors. So if, let's say, Uber sets a rate and the rate is very low, then they would just have to take it. And if they don't, they could just quit. They have the right to do that. So they have to pay for all the overhead of running their cars or equipment, and that's how it is. So basically, I'm thinking that a lot of people already lost a lot during 2009 to 2011. They probably lost most of their stuff, so there isn't very much to lose or to file bankruptcy. So now the unemployment is just invisible because people who are independent contractors and gig workers, and that makes up a larger part of our economy now than it did 11 years ago. 9 to 11 years ago, it definitely makes a lot more of our economy than before. So those people are just invisible. They're not counted in state unemployment numbers. They probably can't file for bankruptcy unless they own a home and they have a mortgage. Then they could probably file for personal bankruptcies, and but they can't file for business bankruptcies. Maybe unless they borrowed money to buy a car or something to drive for Uber or Lyft. Maybe they could be delinquent on that, and if they don't pay the car company, then the car company just simply repossesses the car. And I don't think you could file bankruptcy for that. It's just a simple repossession or a repo. So anyways, thanks for watching. By Ace 1000KS 1975 signing out.